stop at the end. You can be...
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Spoiler Warning Podcast. This is review number 800 with a review of Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. I'm Christopher Schnese.
And I'm Stephen Miller.
And if you're joining us for the first time, the Spoiler Warning Podcast is a weekly film review program. Each week on the show, we're going to dive in, debate, discuss, and argue over the latest films coming to a theater near you. This week, we are returning to theaters to talk about the latest installment in the Mission Impossible franchise. This is technically the second half of the last film, but they conveniently removed all references to the part 1 and part 2 thing that were happening previously. But big film. Most people were probably pretty excited to check this one out. Steven got to see it at Cannes. We're going to talk about it in a second. But Steven, this thing has been happening to me lately on the podcast where I try to go back and listen to our previous episodes talking about the installment before the review we're going to do. Apparently, we never reviewed. I cannot find...
We never reviewed Dead Reckoning Part 1? I'm shocked.
There is no... I was searching on the website. I was searching in Overcast. I was searching everywhere, and I can't find it. So something happened. Either we'd never recorded it, something happened that caused us to not be able to review it. I don't know if something happened, but for whatever reason, I cannot find a review from us of Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1.
You appear to be right, though I forget when it came out. Was it last year? 2 years ago?
I literally started Googling things like the Spoiler Warning Podcast, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, Schnese. Just because I was like trying to figure out how to get the searches. And there's a bunch of other people talking about it. Apparently we never talked about it. And I don't know for the life of me what happened.
No, I believe you. It seems strange, but I'm scrolling through my recordings folder in Overcast, and I do not see anything describing that movie. Maybe it hit one of those times when you were like in Ireland, or we were both traveling back and forth, so like we both watched it, but we never had a convenient time to sit together and record.
That may have been. If I was gone and didn't get back until a few weeks after it was out, maybe we just said, it's gone.
Yep. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, which, we'll see how we feel about this one once it's done.
I believe it was 2 years ago, because it came out the same summer as Dial of Destiny, because I remember thinking they were very strangely similar in their plot devices for many reasons.
Interesting. I also did not watch Dial of Destiny, so apparently I was gone during that summer.
There you go. Well, that's what happened.
All right. I know you had some thoughts on this film when we were doing the part 1 of your Cannes coverage. But Stephen, are you excited to talk about this film at least?
I'm excited. I really want to know where you stand on it, because I know this will nullify the whole point of going to a film festival, but obviously my opinions are going to be informed by mainlining 30-something movies and being sleep deprived. And so they're very different than the opinions one might have if they go to their local movie theater to catch a popcorn flick, So I'm curious to see how you feel, because I will not be confident about any of my opinions about anything, basically, that I saw at Cannes, especially not big blockbusters. So I'm open to being persuaded.
To be fair, though, when you first saw it, it was right at the beginning of the festival, right?
That's true.
So you technically were fresh, though, if you don't count the flight over there and everything, but...
Yeah, it was only movie number like 5 or 6 for me. So yeah, it was still pretty early.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, Stephen, ready to get into this?
I'm ready.
Let's take a listen to the trailer for Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, and then come back and give everybody a review.
This can't all be true.
Every word. CIA Black Vault break-in.
Am I reading this correctly? The Kremlin bombing?
In fairness, the bomb was actually meant to kill him.
He gassed a security briefing.
That was just 2 months ago.
This explains the handcuffs. It's still not clear why he's here.
If we want to bring the world back from the brink, we have to deal with him.
Should he choose to accept?
Smart people on every side are close to panicking.
What exactly is your plan? Your team has been betrayed, Ethan. All your secrets compromised. Everything you are, everything you've done, has come to this. You gave him an aircraft carrier?
Our lives are the sum of our choices. This is your calling, your destiny. I have no regrets. Neither should you.
I need you to trust me. One last time.
All right, so that was the trailer for Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. As folks remember, in Dead Reckoning, there was this rogue AI that was taking over and doing a bunch of bad stuff. And now, as we reach the story, that AI has done some crazy stuff, has basically taken over the whole world, is starting to take over various superpowers' nuclear arsenal, and shit is getting real, real bad. And the world needs Ethan Hunt to come back one last time, rally his troops one last time, and hopefully save the day. Stephen Miller, remind us what you thought of Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning.
Yeah, so my general feeling is my build-up to watching Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning was an interview with Chris McQuarrie and Tom Cruise. I got to listen to them talk for an hour, hour and a half, and they were talking so much about the joy of making these movies, you know, pushing action filmmaking to its limits, doing stunts that no one believed would be humanly possible, the unbelievable training Tom Cruise has to go through to make it happen. And above all, they were talking about the need to entertain audiences as much as possible, basically to cash checks for to build money in the bank for the cinema industry so other people can cash checks and have an easier time trying to find an audience. So they were speaking as if this was going to be Top Gun Maverick, you know, the most immediate crowd-pleasing sensation of all time. And watching the movie the next morning, I was struck by how long it takes for anything crowd-pleasing or exciting to happen. My memory of this movie, and again, I saw an 8:30 a.m. screening when I was still very sleep-deprived, so, you know, I maybe was not, I wasn't at my best, but I feel like it takes well over an hour except for one little shootout type scene, I feel like it's over an hour before there's any actual exciting action taking place. And overall, this movie seems to feature a lot of long exposition where people verbally describe how events relate to the other 7 Mission Impossible films in a way that if you were a diehard Mission Impossible fan, you know, the mythology of Ethan Hunt was something that mattered deeply to you, that might be an amazingly clever screenwriting trick. You know, that might be really important to you. If this were Star Wars, you know, if you had made your personality around being a fan of the Mission Impossible series, I can totally see why this would be a beautiful, cathartic moment. To me, as someone who is a fan of watching Tom Cruise do insane stunts, I just didn't care about all of that. And I feel like at least half of this, 2.5 hour, 2 hour, 40-minute movie is devoted to talking, giving exposition, being very serious, giving every character a kind of a send-off just in case the movie is the end of the series, you know, which they haven't officially said one way or another, but it plays as if it were a swan song for everyone involved. And I was just disappointed in how heavy-handed all of it seemed, especially because it is doubling down on a plot line of the entity from Dead Reckoning that I thought was a fairly unexciting, clunky plot line, you know? And this movie, unfortunately, has to make good on what it teed up in part one, even if they don't call it part one anymore. So in general, I was fairly sour on all of that. And then when the action comes around, I would say there are two big set pieces in this movie, one involving a submarine, one involving a biplane. The submarine, it is amazing that they managed to shoot that. I didn't feel like it had the tension of an action set piece. I think in our Cannes review, I said that if it had been shot on the volume, it would be indistinguishable to me from the idea of Tom Cruise actually doing this underwater choreography, risking life and limb, you know? The biplane, though, is such an amazing sequence, and all the stuff surrounding it, I would say much like the end of Fallout, it's basically like the final 30 or 40 minutes are just a nonstop action set piece. And that is so good. It goes out on such a high that in the end, I still felt okay about watching this movie. But I think it is a big misfire how much exposition they loaded into this, like how much they made the audience wait for the good stuff. But the big question is, what did you feel as someone who maybe is more of a fan of big exposition and tying things together, and you might have more, maybe you even have more refreshed memory of what the hell happened in the other 7 movies. And so maybe you got more joy from some of the callbacks that they squeezed into this one.
Yeah, so in that Cannes review, or the Cannes Dispatch, you know, I was immediately trying to go to defense of a film I hadn't even watched yet, because for me, saying you don't want exposition in your Mission Impossible film is like getting rid of the whole premise of this exposition will self-destruct in 5 seconds, which is the premise. Like, this is a IP where it has to by necessity start with an exposition dump, and you have to get moments where people like sit around tables and talk to each other about who are all the players on the board and stuff like that. So it's like, on one level, I am coming here for that exposition, right? So to me, I'm fine front-loading exposition, front-loading getting together the team, all that kind of stuff. And I'm fine waiting and biding my time, trying to get to the big action set pieces. So as I'm saying this, I have no problem with exposition. This film's problem is that the exposition is dumb as fuck.
Yes.
Like, you didn't describe it that way when you talked about it previously. You kind of just said like, oh, I got to sit through all this exposition. And I think inherently you would have, even if I thought that exposition was really awesome, you would still have thought of it negative. So you didn't feel the need to talk about it being an absurd, stupid as hell bit of exposition. You were just like, oh yeah, it's just a bunch of exposition that I wouldn't have listened to anyways. For me, I was like, whatever, it's going to be fine. I'm going to love this exposition. And I could not for the life of me understand how this film made it past like the draft stage. The whole premise of this like AI taking over the world, and we're going to need to have a spoiler section to actually talk about it for real. But
yeah, the assumed predictability of that is one of the dumbest things I can think of about this script.
yeah. There's a bunch of stuff, and it's fine being like, yeah, there's a super AI that has like calculated all the different permutations of everything that's going to happen. I like that in certain stories. There in later seasons of Westworld, which people had already dropped off on, I did enjoy things that could predict everybody's moves ahead of time. Like that kind of stuff can inherently be cool. Can inherently be kind of an interesting thing. On paper, this entire franchise is kind of about Ethan Hunt running out, doing all his cool stuff, and then having a guy in the chair, right? In this world in which there is an AI that can be the guy in the chair for other people, that is a really interesting idea and concept. This film does nothing with that. Like in the previous film, the other bad guy, I forget the character.
Gabriel.
Gabriel. There's a bunch of things where it's like doors just open for him and stuff like that. And then in this installment, like some doors close randomly and then open for other people, and like that could be played with really, really cool, where people are like, oh shit, what are we gonna do? And then things just open, and it's like they have an AI Benji that is either helping or working against them. That could be interesting, but this film kind of throws that away, and it really comes down to okay, AI has taken over the entire internet and anything that's ever been plugged into an outlet ever, and we're basically just toast. So let's see if we can solve the problem before all the nukes in the world go off. And that, in and of itself, is not a stupid concept or idea. But the idea of literally having a board on the wall that just tells you when a country's nukes have been taken over by a rogue AI. Steven, if you were a world superpower who was, theoretically in opposition to the United States and you had a bunch of nukes, would you just release like some API that anybody could hit to see if your nukes
I mean, you want an RSS feed, obviously.
like the idea that you can have a board that's like, oh, there goes Russia. Oh, there goes China. Like I was like, who's giving them this feed? Like if you look at other things like Arrival, or even like more recently, the like Netflix adaptation of The Three Body Problem, when like shit is affecting the whole world, different superpowers treat that shit differently, and they don't want to share information with other superpowers because they want to be the one superpower that survives at the end. Also,
I mean, it's the hunt for Red October, right? Or no, there's that, but then there's also Crimson Tide, right? Like the idea of a nuclear holocaust could happen because of a failure to communicate, and this movie presupposes we already know everything. I just, there was like so much of the exposition of this film that I was like, dear God, can we just get to doing stuff? And it wasn't that like I didn't want them talking. It was that when they talked, it was dumb as hell. Even the idea of the box, right? We see this in this last film, so it's not a spoiler. There is a box that is used to communicate with the entity. It's like you put on a mask, you go inside of a coffin, and then you like the Vision Pro.
It's your entity Vision Pro, and it communicates with you through images and sound. Steven, I get that this rogue AI has taken over all the computers in the world, theoretically, but how much processing power do you think it takes to simulate entire photoreal variations of all the possible outcomes of things in a way that you could render it in full fidelity to a person? Like, this was not it wasn't like he was listening to a tape and he was remembering, like, oh yeah, I remember when I repelled from the ceiling. Oh yeah, I remember this moment. This was meant to be like actual rendering of what was going to happen. Like nothing communicated this was his imagination. This was all the entity rendering this in real time based on whoever got in the box. And it's like those things where I'm like, we're not that far in the future. Like I get that Mission Impossible has always been cool gadgets that don't really exist, but you at least understand the reality that they are trying to communicate. Like, sure,
right.
We don't have anything that can 3D print a mask that looks photoreal. We don't have anything that can, magically project a thing that it sees in a hallway and project it on a really thin screen that can just be moved around. Like there's a bunch of cool stuff that like is like James Bondy type technology that have always been in these films. But we can take that for granted because it's not that big of a logical leap. But this film goes straight up sci-fi. And it's not like the entity is an extraterrestrial who brought that device to the Earth and you're like, cool, well, it's future tech, so I don't care how it works. It just, there was so much stuff where I was like, I don't know if people know how computers and stuff work.
Certainly they do not.
Yeah, we're going to wait till spoilers, but they definitely don't know how bandwidth works.
Right.
Because there's a line where somebody says the file size of a certain object that can hold things on it. And I was like,
exabytes.
Yeah, I was like, that's great. I don't care how big is it. How fast is it? Because if you're plugging that into normal shit, it's not 100 milliseconds that it's going to take to transfer this. You're going to be waiting there for a while. So yeah, there's just such silly stuff in this thing. And I think really the main problem with this film is it is too, like, I'm going to read you just the description of this film on IMDb. Okay. Sure. I gave my own little intro to this film, but the description on IMDb as of the moment we are recording is, our lives are the sum of our choices. Tom Cruise is Ethan Hunt in Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. That's the entire description for this film. this film is so obsessed with Ethan Hunt in a way that is not it is not in on the joke like it was in previous films. There was the one, I don't remember how many back it was, but Alec Baldwin has this moment. I think it was Alec Baldwin's character has this moment where he is like angrily telling everybody how awesome Ethan Hunt is, and then it's revealed that that's Ethan Hunt wearing a Alec Baldwin mask.
I think Rogue Nation,
maybe, yeah. And like that was fucking hilarious because it was like in on the joke. It was making fun of itself. But this film, honest to God, thinks that Ethan Hunt is the savior of the planet. And yes, in most of the films, he is literally the savior of the planet, but not in the way they treat him this. Like they treat him as an actual deity. And it feels like, you know, like when we talked about Top Gun Maverick, you know, there was all the lines that were like, you're right here where you need to be, things like that. And like all these things were like, you could tell they were talking about him, the actor, and this franchise, the movie. This film feels like that. And it feels like they're going, hey, we as filmmakers are scared of AI. We think AI is destroying the world. So we're going to make a movie that shows AI as the enemy and show you how we are working to overcome it. But the problem is their idea of what AI does and can do is the stupidest shit I've ever seen. And it actively works against this like metaphor of like, we're trying to save film because you're making a fucking dumb film. All that being said, once we start getting into missions, it gets better.
The hour and a half mark.
So I know you said that you didn't really like the submarine.
I will say, though, I like everything surrounding the submarine. Like, there are parallel plot threads happening, and there's a time crunch, and all that worked fine for me. It's just the stunt, the massively expensive, supposedly stunt, like that, I just didn't feel very much watching it.
Yeah, I mean, I assume it's massively expensive because they built a giant tank of water that can rotate like a...
Yes, and they had heavy objects rotating around, and they tried to simulate so he would know where to go, but they couldn't perfectly simulate it, so it was also dangerous for some reason. Because you don't feel that, as far as I'm concerned, when you're watching it.
Well, anyways, from the moment they actually leave for the mission, I was back on board with this film. Until we get to the end and they have to execute all the things that don't make any, like all the exposition pieces. But just the idea of going to a place, trying to do this thing, doing the dive, going to the other place, doing that thing, like that kind of was like, yes, this is what I come to movies for. You know what I mean? Like this is great. Everything that logically propels us to the stuff that's great is obnoxiously dumb. So that's kind of my overall feeling on the film.
Yeah. Well, I'm a little sad. I was almost hoping you were going to launch a wonderful defense of the movie, but I agree. Like that's partly what we come to movies here. I mean, really, we come to this place for magic. You know, we come here to love, to cry, to care. Look, if we're talking about Cruise, Kidman deserves to be up there too. You know, let's be even-handed. But yeah, I mean, I was thinking back over this movie as I was preparing to press the record button with you, and I do agree. The mission itself is fun. Like when it stops for clunky exposition, I get bored again. And in my mind, maybe not clunky exposition, but callbacks. And we'll talk about it in spoilers. But I would say there are like 3 or 4 moments where they kind of pause the fun mission to say, oh my gosh, but look at this clever thing we thought of how this actually connects to another movie from before. And that, I'm sure, again, if I had grown up deeply caring about Mission Impossible, this would be really moving to me, like watching Harrison Ford show up in Blade Runner 2049 or something. But it wasn't. It didn't matter to me. So for me, even the adrenaline of the mission, it was like they punctured it a few times because they wanted to cleverly tell you how they wrapped everything together. And I just didn't care about that. But I will say the mission is fun when they really get going. The logistics, the ridiculous ways Ethan Hunt almost dies many, many times. I feel like this movie also, and they started doing this in the last movie too, it wants Simon Pegg to be able to hold his own in some ways too, and he gets to be more than just the man, you know, the man in the chair or whatever,
Yeah.
and I think that's fun. I enjoy the way it's doing it and giving the side characters room to grow. I like that. Hayley,
I will say though, as much as I like Simon Pegg kicking ass, at this point, a desk person suddenly busting out moves and kicking ass is the equivalent of ripping off a mask and you're not the person we thought you were. At this point, it just feels so cliche. Like even like in Ghost Protocol or whatever the one Jeremy Renner was in, where it's like he's just the desk jockey and he's like, he's a paper pusher, blah 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 blah. But then it turns out he's like, no, actually, I was a super spy, but like I just didn't want to do it anymore, so now I do with the books.
I mean, you saw Spy with Melissa McCarthy, though. Sometimes the desk person winds up being a wonderful spy, and that's a whole genre to itself. But true. No, obviously it's hard to believe. But at this point, that's the kind of creative license that I'm happy to give a franchise that's been around this long. It's fun enough to me. I think Hayley Atwell continues to be a great addition to the cast. I enjoy what she gets to do here. I don't know if you read the first Decoding Everything dispatch, but the idea, and I won't spoil it, but a part of what she has to do involves being able to react quickly within 100 milliseconds to get something. Yeah. And that was very much my life trying to get tickets for the last 2 weeks. So it resonated in a funny way with me. While fighting
the stakes
an AI.
Were slightly different though, Stephen.
I don't know. You could argue. Anyway, there is plenty of fun to be had here, and I have warmth. The like hour and a half movie that is, as far as I'm concerned, actually a Mission Impossible movie in this movie is totally fun. It isn't quite Fallout, but it's better than Dead Reckoning. Like it has tons of fun to recommend it. Yeah. It is just wrapped in such clunky, unnecessarily weighted material, and I struggle to understand why they did that.
I will say too, we're mostly agreeing on everything, but I will throw out my one hot take for this movie. I think the climactic plane battle is a little silly.
Oh shit!
It's impressive, but it's like the entire conceit of what is happening is again dumb to me. Where I'm like, who's in that dispatch episode, I was saying like, I've only seen a few clips of that ending shot, and I know there's two planes, and I know there's a different amount of people, and I don't know who's doing what or why. Watching it, I'm like, what is your plan? Like, I know how far you're trying to go and why you're trying to go that far. I don't know what you think is actually going to happen for anything in those, in like any of your goals. Don't make any sense. And I like too that they even joke. They make jokes about the fact that they're about to do this scene where they're like, oh yeah, we got these planes. They're not connected to the internet or anything. They're totally analog. Also, I
even brought a second one.
It's just, it makes zero sense. Like, I'm surprised he didn't look right to the camera after he said that.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I don't care.
Yeah.
I loved it. I was riding such a high by the time that scene happened. I was totally fine with it.
Yeah, and it's not that I don't find it impressive and I don't enjoy what it's doing. It's just so long, and the whole time I'm going like, what? Who? Why? It's like in college if he had a buddy who was like, check this out, I'm gonna do this, and then this, and you're like just. Cause you just want to show that you can do it. There's no goal that you're trying to achieve with it. You're like, all right, cool, let's do it. Let's see it.
Yeah.
So,
do we want to do verdicts and go into spoilers so we can talk about maybe some more details of the movie? Meaning you talk about details and I'll hope I remember them.
Yeah, let's do that. Stephen Miller. For those who are not going to stick around to spoilers, if you're going to give us a must-see, recommend with a caveat, wait for rental, pass with a caveat, or must avoid, what would you give it?
Reminiscing about the fun parts of the movie are making me slightly warmer on it than I otherwise would have been. I went in thinking wait for rental was going to be my answer for this one, but I'm giving it recommend with a caveat because when it gets fun, when the mission gets going, this is still one of the more fun franchises that are out there, and it does pay that off in the end. But there's a big ass caveat, which is that I think you could give this movie like an hour haircut at least, and it would be a better movie. Yeah. So caveat, you got to sit for a while to get to the good stuff. But there is still good stuff here, and the fact that I remember it 2 weeks later means like it was good enough to pierce through sleep deprivation and everything else. Yeah. So I think it is worth it to see it in theaters, because it's just more awe-inspiring when you can see it on a big screen. And they want to save movies, so come on, help them out a little bit. Lilo and Stitch can't keep beating Mission Impossible. Like, you got to give Tom Cruise something.
Yeah, I mean, Tom Cruise doesn't like sit on the carpet and drag his ass across it. He actually does real stunts.
Yeah.
All right, for me, it is also Reckoning with the caveat. As we said, when people are talking about the ideas that represent the things that set this movie in motion, it is dumb as hell. The actual motion of everything is actually quite enjoyable. Even though it gets away from the gadgets and stuff that you would get from a normal Mission Impossible film, and it kind of like there's like two real main gadgets that all feel they're like experimental stuff we might actually have today, versus being like a gadget that's like, oh, that seems a little out there, but it's pretty cool. So that stuff, it feels more grounded in what they're trying to do, but it feels like a big exhaustive mission with a bunch of places to go and a bunch of things to accomplish, all driving towards like the climactic part of this film. So I think once it gets going, it is worth the watch. You just have to put up with a lot of very, very silly AI talk about a future that isn't going to happen. But yes, that is our ratings for the non-spoiler part of our review of Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. For people who aren't going to stick with us, Steven, you want to say goodbye to them and let them know where to find you?
Sure. People can find me at sdavidmiller on Blue Sky or Threads, or sdavidmiller.com.
People can find me at ChristopherInRealLife.com or ChristopherIRL on a number of social platforms. You can find the podcast over at thespoilerwarning.com, where you get a bunch of the back episodes of the show. If you want to subscribe to the show, you can do so on Overcast, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or wherever podcasts are found. If you want to know when the episodes go live, you can follow us at twitter.com/spoilerwarning, facebook.com/thespoilerwarning, or instagram.com/thespoilerwarning. If you want to get a hold of us directly, you can send an email to fans@thespoilerwarning.com, or you can use the contact form on our site. Music for this episode will come from a track selected from artlist.io, so hopefully you're enjoying that. That music is playing now. That music is going to fade up, and then 5 seconds after that music fades out, that song is going to self-destruct, and we are going to be talking full-blown spoilers for Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, and in theory, all the missions impossible from before now. So, see you in a sec.
And don't stop at the end. You can be anything you want. You can be anything you choose. Do not let it slip away. 'Cause if you never try it, you never know. You can be anything you want.
All right, so we are back. This is Spoiler Territory. It's the after part of our review of Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. Stephen Miller, where do you want to start? Do you want to start with the flashback-y thing, or the tiebacks to previous films?
Yeah. Let's go through those, because I think I got all of them, but I haven't revisited the older Mission Impossibles in quite a while, so I didn't have quite the aha moments that I think they were aiming for.
Yeah, so I think there's a range of goods and bads. The character's name, who I'm forgetting, who's the guy who makes the vault from the very, very first film, I think that's like the actually genuinely fun tie back to the first film in a way that makes complete logical sense, that this person is where he is today based on the events of that first film. How are you feeling about that one?
I feel okay with it. I think that is one of those examples where I would kind of want to rewatch some of the older movies that it ties to, because I get conceptually that it makes sense how he is where he is today because of these previous installments now in the universe brain way, but it didn't strike me as especially clever, because it isn't like I remember the previous movies well enough to be like, oh my God, you perfectly connected the dots. Like, my experience would have been the same if they said, you know, all that other stuff, that is a callback. Like, I had the exact same exact same response, because it isn't like I have all of these details in my head and was eagerly awaiting them to connect them in some way. You know, like they could have made it all up and I wouldn't know the difference.
Yeah.
Like they could have planted a detail that wasn't even in the old movies and just pretended that it had been there.
Yeah, or completely retcon a detail of a previous film, which we'll get to in a second. But yeah, for me, this was the one tie back where I was like, all right, this is fucking rad.
Okay.
Because, I mean, just seeing that guy show up and then being like, oh my God, so this guy's life got theoretically ruined by the fact that Ethan Hunt broke into an impenetrable vault that guy invented, stole a knock list, and then they were like, you had one fucking job. You're going to get shipped out to some island off the coast of Alaska, and good fucking luck. Like, you know, like every single spy/government story has a trope of like, if you do something bad, they ship you off to like Siberia or someplace cold, right? And the idea that this person has been stuck there all because of what Ethan did then, and now he's going to be this linchpin to actually them being able to continue the mission. That felt like the kind of fun thing where it feels less like a Easter egg of like, hey, did you notice those are the shoes that the one guy wore in the third movie when he stole them from the soldier? You know, like that kind of crap that you get in a lot of movies. Like that didn't feel, it felt organic and genuine in a way that felt like a good surprise that meant something. Like, you know, in a story that is literally purporting to be about causality and the choices you make, you know, like whatever the line was, you're the sum of all the choices you've ever made. And like having that choice that negatively impacted somebody else that he has never thought about until now, being like a positive consequence of the things that he did back then, that felt really, really cool.
I agree with that. For me, though, the fact that not only is it a positive consequence, but it is understood immediately by the character to be a positive consequence feeds more into this Ethan Hunt is Jesus and nothing bad can be true about him aspect of the movie, right? Like, I almost want there to be some tension where then by the end of the movie, they realize in hindsight it was good for them. But instead, it's almost like the guy's like, I am happy and I want to give you a firm handshake and thank you for what you did, you know?
I mean, to be fair, he's happy. He wasn't happy at first. He became happy over time when he realizes retroactively that like...
Right, we just don't have to watch any of that. By the time we meet him, then Ethan Hunt is Jesus.
But to be fair, Stephen, if you got shipped off to a remote island off the coast of Alaska because of some things like you know, we used to work together. If I did something and you took the fall for it and you got shipped off, you would forever remember me, right?
Of course.
So I feel like you would be like that fucking, like you would have, you know, like a little shrine in your little snow, whatever you call those buildings.
Sure.
I just like, to me it makes sense that he would remember him.
Okay. I'll give you that. Now this is where maybe we were being too vague before, because I thought your first question was asking me about, this came more in the exposition section when they realized that the entity only exists because of actions Ethan Hunt took in, I assume it was Ghost Protocol, right? It was like one of the Mission Impossibles in the early 2010s that it turns out set this in motion. And that was one that maybe if I understood it more, I would find it clever, but I didn't understand it because I don't remember Ghost Protocol well enough to. And so that just kind of annoyed me that they were spending time trying to make me feel excited for them tying things together.
Yeah, like that's one of the ones where it felt like they were like, oh, remember when he stole the rabbit's foot or whatever it was called? What if that was like the proto entity and that we got the entity based on that? It's like you tried to like kill your grandfather, but instead impregnated your grandmother.
It's an easy mistake to make.
It's like one of those things where I was like, I guess that's cool. Like, it's kind of cool. Again, but I think we're at 0 now, right? Because you created the entity that's -1.
Yeah.
You also created the guy who can help you uncreate the entity, and now you're back to 0.
Yep.
If we're doing the sum of all your actions. But like for me, those are the kind of the callbacks that they weren't as exciting to me. And as fun as like the 100 milliseconds thing is, like completely justifying a character that appeared the last film just so you could have her vocation be the thing that allows you to unplug a drive that has like the most bandwidth of any other wireless device I've ever seen. Like I didn't like, you tell me there's a thumb drive that can
fully optical drive in
a
like
5-dimensional tesseract.
Yeah,
optical drive.
Yeah.
I forgot what he called it, but I was like, all right, fucking interstellar thumb drive over here.
Yeah.
It was like, so you're telling me this device that has been at the bottom of a sub since 2012 or whatever they said it was, is capable, when you plug a different USB drive into it, to transmit the entire internet.
Because Luther designed the other device that way, so of course it's going to work.
I get it. So can we talk about the poison pill, Stephen?
I was about to ask, yeah.
Okay. So I get that if you have the source code for something, that might help you be able to look at the code of the something, having had the source code originally, and maybe find a way to either find the hidden backdoor into it or do something, right? But source code from 20 years ago, or 10 years ago, sorry, 12 years ago, whatever it is, source code from 12 years ago looks nothing like the code that is currently live on the entire internet and currently infecting all the stuff. So how does plugging in, I get the idea of a poison pill, right? It's kind of like, Independence Day. You fly your ship in, you plug it in, you upload it to the mothership. It takes over everything because it's like a malicious virus. So you're adding a virus to the virus. Boom, it does everything. That's fine. I can hand wave away that. That makes sense to me somehow. But plugging a poison pill into the original source code and then hoping that that somehow infects the live, mutated, changed, running program that has been running on its own, replicating, multiplying, changing its own code to give it access to new things, learning. How are those supposed to, like, let's even do it the dumbest way possible. Let's go back to like Avengers Ultron, right? Remember when you see like Jarvis and then you see Jarvis changing colors? I get that, right? One thing is overriding another thing, right?
Yeah.
Like that makes sense. It's visually, it makes sense. I don't get how having legacy source code makes you more powerful than the version that's been running and replicating for the last 12 years.
So my understanding, and I don't think this is well thought out at all in the movie, but I filled in the blanks in a way that worked for me, is what Luther has created he didn't really create a poison pill. He created a poison pill generator, right? He created a thing that if you look at source code, you can find a vulnerability and exploit it, and then create a thing that if it gets consumed by the entity that has that source code, it creates a paradox or whatever. It explodes it, right? It breaks it, because there's a thing that's true in philosophy and math and a bunch of things, that like there's no perfect system. Like any system is going to have a thing that cannot be true or false. Like it's going to have something it can't express, something that'll drive it crazy, right? Yeah. If it has to try to find a way to handle it. So yes, the entity has been evolving for the last 10 years, but that evolution is constrained, right? It's like it's a machine that knows how to evolve itself, and it came from this root DNA, and that root DNA doesn't leave. So my understanding of this poison pill is it's almost like there is a secret code, right? Like when a hypnotist says, if I say, razzle dazzle, you're gonna suddenly, I don't know what hypnotists do.
It's abracadabra.
Sure.
It's the one phrase that all magicians use.
I don't think, do hypnotists say abracadabra? I feel like hypnotists pick a random code word
to
trigger them, like for sleeper agents and stuff too.
Yeah.
So basically, the idea is there is this signal, this thing that when the entity is nomming through the whole internet, it eats this, then it will break it. It isn't because you created an AI that's more powerful based on the same source code. It's that you know, based on the DNA of the entity, that it will not be able to digest this thing. Or if it does, then you created a backdoor into it or something. And so I believe what the task is Tom has to get the poison pill, and he has to immediately get it connected to the internet, basically.
Yeah.
Because if he can get it connected to the internet, then the entity who is sweeping all internet will eat it, and then all of a sudden will do the backdoor command or whatever that Luther pre-programmed it to do. Now, how Luther knew what to pre-program it to do when he died before they made the plan of how to catch the entity, I have no idea. But he's like the Saw mastermind. He thinks a million steps ahead.
So what's weird is there are two competing narratives that got intertwined. One of them technically makes sense. One of them is, I need to trick the genie into the bottle. I think they literally said that in the film.
Yeah.
And the idea is the entity is telling Ethan to let it into the servers so that it can survive. And we think Ethan will do it because reasons. Because he knows who he is. He's the architect of his pain. Oh, yeah, that's the other movie. So that's fine. And their plan is we're going to make a thing that to the entity looks like the special server.
Right.
So it's going to willingly go into it the way the entity thinks Ethan's going to willingly connect the internet.
None of which should require a poison pill.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like we are going to trick it to going inside of this thing, and then we're going to close it, and then it can't get out. And now we've locked it in there. I assume that an AI would survive by going inside of a box, but also leave copies of itself outside of the box to make sure everything gets destroyed on the outside.
Right. Well, that's the problem is the idea of going in somewhere when you are an AI doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Which is fine. But the idea, so there's a point where they try to say the poison pill is a thing that will generate the world that looks like, it's like the poison pill will somehow use the source code to make it so that the entity thinks it's going inside of the servers, but it's actually going to a box. But again, that doesn't require the poison pill. It doesn't require the source code. We know from the
if you had the poison pill, it shouldn't require you to make the box look anything like what it wants to get into anymore.
Yeah.
Because you should have the power to trick it in any other way. So I don't really know how those two things connect either.
Yeah, it just doesn't make any sense. Other things that don't make sense. Steven, so let's say the entire internet's infected, right? If you kill the infection, does that automatically equal all internet are gone? Like, because the U.S. government in the film is like, whoa. We can't plug the poison pill into the internet because then we won't have internet. And like, I can't do shit without Wi-Fi. So
yeah, I don't know what the movie thinks AI infecting things means, because it seems to be imagining that AI is like a cancer and the poison pill is like chemo or radiation, and that it's inevitably going to hurt the useful parts of the internet as well as the bad, which doesn't make sense to me. But I don't know too if it's like how they wield the poison pill, but that doesn't make sense because Luther isn't there anymore, so no one would even know how to program it. Because you could imagine like the ultimate kill switch is just unleash the poison pill, and then they know they'll kill the entity, but it might take down the world, with it, or at least take down the world's power grid in some way.
Yeah.
And then the genie in the bottle trick is like, well, okay, we can do this instead. And the fact that they combine them makes me not have any idea what they're doing.
Yeah, and the fact that the magical optical drive is treated as like a magical crystal, like a Horcrux that has the entity in it. And I'm like, would you not just immediately step on that? Like, why are we holding it in a like otter box?
Right.
Or like a little pelican case, trying to pretend like we'll just hold on to this for safekeeping.
I mean, you want Ethan Hunt to have it. Maybe he'll be able to do something cool with it. Maybe he'll be able to restore the whole world. He'll rebuild.
Yeah.
I don't know. What doesn't make sense to me, and maybe Simon Pegg also knows how to program all this stuff, I don't know, but it doesn't make sense to me because Luther pre-created all of this, and so he's not there anymore. So the idea that Ethan can wield it in some way like doesn't really make sense to me.
Yeah, so I think there was an assumption that the source code would allow you to take control of the entity, which is what the other bad guy wants to do, and he thinks that's what the poison pill actually does. Or maybe the poison pill is a switch where heads, you take control of the entity, tails, the entity gets destroyed, and like it's just a thing where like depending on who flips it over to which side and plugs it into the drive determines what's going to happen to it. But it definitely seemed like it was a thing where like people wanted to like, oh, sure, the entity's bad, but like if somebody could control it, we could remake the world to be good. I don't know. There was just a lot of ideas that didn't make sense, and I never knew what the fuck was going on. Yeah. All right. Last thing, Steven. I said the plane fight scene didn't make a lot of sense to me. Do you? I understand that that drive survived a collision with the seafloor in a nuclear submarine. Oh, hold on. By the way, one last thing before I get into that. Ethan enters the ship, and as far as I can tell, plugs a nuclear submarine into like an anchor battery pack and turns the whole submarine on. Because he walks up to that thing and it has like the electricity don't get shocked thing, but like all the power is out, and he like pulls out this little thing that is like the size of this freaking Yeti thing, and he like sets it down, and he unplugs the sub and he plugs it into it, and the little screen comes on and he gets power on, and then the whole sub lights up. What? How did that strike you as weird?
I'm gonna be honest, that didn't strike me at all. I just didn't even notice.
I was like, first of all, where was that? Second of all, how much juice is that thing outputting that it can power up a nuclear submarine?
Right. Though it isn't, it's not like piloting the sub, right? It's just like the computer on the sub and the lights. So I don't know.
It just still seems like a lot of power to do it all. But, you know, who knows?
Yeah.
Anyways, what I was saying is that drive, the one that has the source code, survived the sub colliding with the seafloor and imploding, partially imploding. But do you think it would survive Ethan Hunt's plane falling out of the sky? Like, what is Gabriel's plan? Besides maniacally laughing and thinking he has the upper hand.
Right. I understand. Yeah, from Gabriel's perspective, he should be afraid of the drive dying. I think he just believes it's a very sturdy drive because maybe it's like a black box or something, right? It's like meant to withstand anything. It's meant, like, there's a reason they all believed it survived when Ethan first went down to the submarine, right? So maybe it's like protocol to put it in some very, very, very protective thing. But yeah, I guess Gabriel's plan is if Ethan goes down, circle back and find him later or something and find the drive. I'm not sure. He seems oddly disinterested in where Ethan falls.
Yeah. It just seemed a little weird. And I like the whole time I was like, also the other thing I kept thinking about, I was like, you want to dogfight Maverick?
Yeah.
What are you, an idiot?
Yeah, it's strange.
All right. And any last things you have questions with, Steven?
I guess the only other one is Shea Wiggum, the reveal that he's John Voight's son. Do you care? Does that mean anything to you?
That was by far the worst callback out of any of them, because it was one of those things where like they reveal it and I went, what? Like, it didn't shock me into like, oh, mind explosion. It shocked me in the, yeah, but why? What does that give us now? Like, it didn't make any sense to me. I was like, I don't get why any of it matters.
Yeah, I did not care at all. I guess the last thing I want to say is I'm realizing I think I just don't like Nick Offerman in movies because I didn't really like him as the president in Civil War. I struggled with the voiceover narration in The Life of Chuck. And in this movie, there's this whole drama that takes place around President Angela Bassett making the hard decision. And Nick Offerman is someone we follow a lot as the kind of the general, one of the Joint Chiefs or something, who seems to be having reservations, and he has his whole arc here. And every time it cut to him, I was just like, I'm watching a stupid, cheesy movie right now. I don't know if he's just such a comic actor to me that I just can't allow him to be in a drama, but it just that stuff also didn't work for me.
So I liked him in the reading the report part of the film, which, by the way, it works for the trailer. All these people like, oh, looking at this rap sheet, but at the end when they're like, I get the handcuffs, but why is he here? Nothing in the film answers that question, why he's here, because it really just like, hey, remember all these cool things we did? And it's really just 3 of the cool things that we did. So that's a whole separate thing. But I think he has the right voice and presence for that kind of like, I am a generally type person who is going to ask you questions now from a place of authority. But yeah, his whole arc of ask for the gun so that later it can be revealed that like I knew somebody else was going to do something. That's why I asked for the gun, not I was going to try to become my character from Civil War. So yeah, I agree with you. I wasn't a big fan there, but I was fine with his presence in the film. But I did forget to ask you how you felt about the Oscars, because he also did the voiceover.
Oh, yeah,
Oscars,
that's fine.
right?
That's fine. I'll take him in an Oscar ceremony any day.
Okay. Just making sure. And yeah. Is that it, Stephen?
I think we did it.
All right. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to say goodbye to this episode. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
One last time.